Wes Goldberg, Wednesday, May 8th, cold open question. Met Gala just happened. Ben Simmons, for some reason, was there, okay? That in itself, subscribe to our After Hours Patreon if you want us understanding, trying to figure out why Ben Simmons was at the Met Gala.
Is that a joke, or do we actually have that?
Not yet, but if people want it. Yeah,
Brendan and I... Gala thoughts.
Yeah, Brendan and I have been hiding you on our, $100 a month NBA fashion Patreon this whole time, and no one told you.
That makes sense.
But a weird thing to exist. But who to you, if you were just like, why is this player there? We obviously are in cover a league where tons of players are fashionable. Russell Westbrook has been to the Met Gala. I think Shea will go to the Met Gala at some point, right? Who would be the funniest player to you if they were just like, yeah, that guy is at the Met Gala and I don't understand why?
So I have two answers to this. I have one that actually would make sense. I like the idea of Bruce Brown being there, full cowboy Western outfit. It's in vogue with Beyonce releasing her cowboy albums and all this stuff. Like, he would fit there. I don't know if that would be funny, but it would be a little funny. The correct answer here is Jimmy Butler, only because he takes this stuff so seriously. I don't know if it would be emo Jimmy at the Met Gala. I don't know if it would be dreadlock Jimmy at the Met Gala, but it would be some sort of new memeable Jimmy Butler that we would get at the Met Gala. So it's got to be Jimmy.
Jimmy would be meme to death, right? He would be he would do something bizarre. He would do something emo cowboy. Whatever it is, you would get something. I'm kind of surprised he hasn't gone yet. In some ways, I guess he's been playing, but
this would have been the year, right? This would have been the year where they got eliminated early. Maybe that would have been his plan all along, but he was not there, unfortunately.
Maybe not the time to go when
when Pat Riley's calling you out in a press conference.
Yeah, when your boss is like, stop being goofy, basically, ethers you. Maybe that's not the time to go. My answer is on the different end. You went for guys that have that care about fashion and their look to some degree. I'm going to throw a picture up for people on YouTube, and this is someone who does not care. This photo is via the Cavs social account from when he was with the Cavs. It's Robin Lopez. Okay. This is how he showed up to every game. Does not care about what he's wearing. Brands are mismatched. He always is wearing that Mariners hat. I want to see Robin Lopez take it so non-seriously and just show that's what I mean. I want something bizarre that just is out of place. In Robin Lopez in high society, in couture, in a dressed up version of that is something and also just imagine him making small talk with Bad Bunny. I could see Jimmy Butler having a conversation with Bad Bunny, with Jeremy Allen White, with Iota Berry, whatever, whomever.
He probably already knows these people.
Right, he already knows them. They've had connects. Robin Lopez explaining who he is to your favorite actor, to Barry Keoghan, is just a weird thing.
You could take this one step further and just go with the person that Robin Lopez is the disciple of, and that's Tim Duncan, isn't it? It's just like Kmart flannel, board shorts, just showing up, doesn't even want to be here. Tim Duncan would walk in and be like, why am I here? I definitely took the wrong turn somewhere. So that would be sort of that. I could see Nikola Jokic, who also has been a little bit more fashion forward, I might say,
but
lately with the suit game, but
turned into an ad campaign for the Minions movie, though, is what it's turned into. Yeah,
strong performance by Jokic. It's the strongest performance of his playoffs so far, I would say.
Yeah, we'll get into that all on today's Just Basketball Show. We've got Nuggets Wolves. We've got the Knicks going up 1-0. We've got Pat Riley. We've got Cavs Celtics and Thunder Mavs all on today's Just Basketball Show. Welcome into the Just Basketball Show for Wednesday, May 8th. I am Chris Manning. That is your guy, Wes Goldberg. We are here with you 3 times a week, covering all things hoops, NBA, WNBA, free agency, all of that and more. And right now, it's NBA playoff time. For transparency's sake, this is how the show structure is going to go. We are recording this first part about 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are recording the end of the show, so Thunder Mavs and Cavs Clippers. We're going to record those after those 2 games have ended. So Thunder Mavs is probably the second most important thing, but we're putting it at the end based on when we're recording for chunk and or show organization purposes. So as we have to start with Wolves and the Nuggets because I going beyond the basic, the obvious is I think a hallmark of the show. But I think very simply, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now a more realistic NBA champion than I ever would have believed. And that is because they're up 2-0 on the defending champs. Took it to them in a real way in Game 2. I don't want to say like broke the Nuggets, but they have Jamal Murray clearly frustrated, Michael Malone clearly frustrated, everyone on that team a little out of sorts. And they won Game 2 without Rudy Gobert. They have full control of the series, which is not something I would have expected 2 games in. This team is playing awesome. They are playing with confidence. They look every bit the part of a team that could win the whole championship this year, and I did not think that was the case coming into the playoffs. I mean, we all picked against them. We all picked the Phoenix Suns. What were we doing? What were we doing, Wes?
Stop reminding me of that. No, you can go ahead and say it. They broke the Nuggets. That's not to say that the Nuggets can't be put back together, but in Game 2, they broke the Nuggets. You were talking about the show structure at the beginning there, Chris. Here's a little wrinkle I'm going to add into today's show. I'm going to try to give you a hot take for every matchup that we discuss.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to give you one big take that I've got. Here's my big take for Wolves Nuggets.
I'm gonna match this. I'm gonna match this with you. I'm on the fly. We're gonna do this.
This series is over.
Oh,
the Timberwolves are going to win, and the only question now is whether or not they play the Mavericks or the Thunder in the next round in the Western Conference Finals. The Denver Nuggets have to win 4 of the next 5 games. Only 2 of them are going to be in Denver, a place where they just lost to the Timberwolves twice. There's a lot been made about the Nuggets' home court advantage over the years. The altitude, the great record, all these things. Very quietly, the Minnesota Timberwolves have won the 5th most games at home this season. They are also a very good home team. And that was not discussed a lot. If Anthony Edwards is this player for 2 of the next 5 games, the Timberwolves are going to win this series. They do not have an answer for Anthony Edwards. They threw Justin Holiday at Anthony Edwards in Game 2 as they were searching for those answers. You mentioned the frustration level that this was at. Maybe it was the referees that they were upset with, but they would not have been that upset had they not been down 30 at one point in this game. They had no answers for it. They're picking up the Timberwolves were picking up the Nuggets full court. I have never seen Nikola Jokic that rushed in a game. He looked completely out of sorts. Jamal Murray is already hobbled. Aaron Gordon cannot figure out how to make a three-pointer these entire playoffs. The fact that they went up 2-0 and won Game 2 without Rudy Gobert and have no answer for Anthony Edwards, to me, Chris, this series is over. The series is over. The Timberwolves are going to be in the Western Conference Finals.
So here's the thing. I agree with this take because it's just I think the Wolves are that good.
Yeah.
I just think the Wolves are them. Like, they are them. We say people are him. They are them. Like, I have watched the clips of them defending Jamal Murray probably like 10 times through today because they're putting him in hell. They are pincing him. He gets across half court and they are trapping him with Walker, with Ant, with Conley, with Jaden McDaniels. Like, all those guys are hounding Jamal Murray, and it is clearly driving him insane. I've never seen Jamal Murray get like driven this insane, and some of it is definitely the calf. That wrap on his leg is big. I think he's definitely more hurt than he is probably going to acknowledge publicly. He's out talking to the media right now. So
no, we're going to get a huge article in The Athletic the moment the Nuggets are eliminated about what Jamal Murray has gone through and how much of a fighter he is and blah, blah, blah. That's going to happen.
Yeah, there's the I can't remember what the term they use on the press box for like
the now you tell us.
Told you, like,
yeah, Brian Curtis.
The now you tell. Yeah. Shout out. Yeah, like we're getting a now you tell us story. 2 minutes, like just how we got the Frank Vogel is to blame for the Phoenix Suns story 2 minutes after the final tip of that game in that series. We're getting one about Jamal Murray's calf, I'm very sure. And just how tired Jokic is and all this stuff. Like, I think it's coming. It just feels like it is there. But the Wolves are doing everything you could have wanted. And even like, it speaks to me for them as a team that they didn't show up in Game 2 and be like, okay, we can dial this back a little bit. We got our game on the road. We won in Denver already. Where Gobert's, away for the birth of his child, like, it's okay if our intensity is a half step, a full step back for this game. It wasn't. It was in some ways leveled up another level. They were like, fuck it, we have to win this.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it felt like exactly that. This is the moment you take a step off a normal team, and it wouldn't be a conscious thing. It would just be like, hey, Denver's on the ropes. They know that they can't lose 2 at home. They cannot drop this game. Rudy Gobert is out. He is the guy that we traded for to stop Jokic. We already had Karl Anthony Towns, right? We already had Naz Reid. We did not have Rudy Gobert. And yet they ramped up that energy, almost anticipating that the Nuggets were going to ramp it up and that they had to match it. And yet the Nuggets just were not ready for that second haymaker. I don't know. Like, we're 2 rounds into this fight, and it doesn't feel like the Nuggets have landed a punch yet. And the Timberwolves just keep coming at them over and over and over. And when I say they have them on the ropes, I mean, this thing feels like we're headed towards a KO, right?
Yeah.
And I just cannot believe how overwhelming this team is. They come out with so much intensity right out the gate, right? It was first play of the game. Anthony Edwards is just right up into Jamal Murray's face saying, I'm not going to let you shoot today, buddy. I know it's the first play of the game. I think it was game 1, but I'm not even going to let you shoot today. What they are doing, picking up full court, has thrown Denver's offense so out of rhythm where, the Denver Nuggets offense, it operates like a Swiss movement watch, right? There's very specific gears, there's very specific motions, there's very specific things that it needs to get to. But when you throw a wrench into it, it's very hard to throw that wrench into it, right? Because it usually just grinds up that wrench and just keeps on moving. But the Minnesota Timberwolves have figured out how to kind of slow down those gears. And I don't know that the Nuggets have the capacity to get to that next level that they need to get to, considering that they're already coming off of a long finals run. It's very hard to repeat and play that much basketball in that short amount of time. Jamal Murray is hurt. There's definitely injuries up and down that roster. They don't have as much depth as they had last year. There's real things. But also, the Timberwolves are overwhelming. And it's awesome.
Yes.
And they have been a good team all year long, right? This is a team that could have been the 1 seed. This is a team whose net rating was better than the Nuggets in the regular season, was better than the Nuggets net rating last year when the Nuggets won the championship, right? Like, this is a team that by every account on the stat sheet during the regular season was as impressive as almost any other team outside of Boston in the NBA, and yet we kept overlooking them because they're basically their logo, right? Because they're the Minnesota Timberwolves. But this is a really good basketball team.
Well, let me ask that question, Wes. For you, I'm going to use the pejorative we and say, okay, you and I, you, me, Brendan, the entire basketball discourse, we did not maybe take the Wolves super seriously. I'm going to say, broadly speaking, that's the case. Why is that? Like, what is it? It's not, like, yes, it's the logo and it's their history and it's the unprovenness. Maybe it's like we're thinking it's too early for Ant. Like, what to you is the reason? Like, what is it about this team that we were just like, like, I don't take it seriously?
We didn't know that Anthony Edwards was this guy. We didn't know if they had that superstar. It's why we looked at the Phoenix Suns matchup and we were like, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal. We know, for the most part, what those guys are capable of in the playoffs. We don't know what this Minnesota Timberwolves team is capable of in the playoffs. I thought that the star power would be the overwhelming factor in that Suns-Timberwolves series. And I was right. Except the star power came from Anthony Edwards, not from the Phoenix Suns. It was Minnesota's star that was the overwhelming factor, and it's been the overwhelming factor in this one. That was the worst game Nikola Jokic has played in 3 years in Game 2.
Yeah.
And Anthony Edwards just keeps being this. And I said this I think I said it on the show before the playoffs started. I said, can Anthony Edwards be the best player in the playoffs? And if he can be, the Timberwolves have a chance. And the only reason I asked that, I recognized it was a slim chance that Anthony Edwards could be the best player in the Western Conference, but I also asked it because I knew he had the capacity to be the best player in the Western Conference. I just didn't see it happening this soon. And now it's not a question about whether or not Anthony Edwards is making that level of impact. It's when he's going to make that level of impact. Anthony Edwards at this point feels inevitable. It feels overwhelming all the time. And what this is, and you watch him in that game, Chris, about like Denver just doesn't have an answer for him. He's slithering through cracks that he's creating and making up on the fly. His fast step is so much faster than everybody else that by the time he's past these guys, it almost looks like he's slowing down into his layup.
I mean, when Reggie Jackson tried to swipe at him and he just like stepped away, like it was not like he saw it coming and then just pointing at him, it's like this guy has he has the world of the series like in his hands. He is seeing things like he is like when like it's like when you see a movie and they slow it down and he's doing Matrix shit. The bullet is like whizzing past his head and he's not like just dodging and he's pointing at it and saying, "I'm dodging your shit." It doesn't matter to him. Nothing is phasing him. Which against the Nuggets, the Nuggets are obviously, they're not like the exact team you would say, okay, this is a team that has all the stuff to throw at Ant and frustrate him and bother him. But this is a championship caliber team with a really good coach, the best player in the world, that has like really good solid team defense and really good role players. You would have thought they would have had something for him, something to make him pause for a second. And instead, he's just like, nah. It's like, I'm good. I can handle all of this. Like, to quote John Morant, Anthony Edwards is good in the West. It literally feels like he is actually good in the West.
Anthony Edwards has not only grabbed these playoffs, I think he's also grabbed this entire generation that we see coming, right? This next generation is going to be the Anthony Edwards generation. It's not going to even be necessarily I don't know that it's going to be the Luka Doncic generation. I don't know that it's going to be the Alexander generation.
Luka almost feels like that'd be like, this would be a good list for us to do, is like the next, like who is like the head of the next generation. Well, it feels like the next, like, because it's kind of like Webby's like in his own thing, and then I feel like I almost feel like Ant and Luka are like a little separated. It's like how LeBron and KD are a little bit separated in terms of age.
Luka and Tatum are sort of in that same area, like Devin Booker.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought up a list. I have the top 5 players in 5 years from now.
Love it.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Number 5. Still going to be Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
Number 4, I've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Number 3, Victor Wembanyama.
Number 3.
He's going to be the 3rd best player in the league 5 years from now.
Okay.
Number 2, I have Anthony Edwards.
Okay.
I have Luka number 1. I still have Luka number 1. The hardest part was whether or not Anthony Edwards was going to be number 1, and I understand there's going to be a level of recency bias in this thing, and I'm trying to fend it off because the body of work Luka has put together is still greater than what Anthony Edwards has put together, and Luka, in terms of playoff level performance, just as good, if not better, than what Anthony Edwards is putting together. But man, it feels like Ant could be number 1, but his charisma, the star power, the wattage, like, put this guy at the Met Gala, right? Like, he is going to be the face of the generation. He doesn't necessarily have to be the best player of the generation, but he's going to be the face of the generation, and he could still be the best player of that generation too. But that to me is sort of where we're going here, and what's surprising to me is how fast we're getting there. Steph, KD, and LeBron are not in the second round of the playoffs. They didn't make it that far. Even Jokic's generation, which was sort of the generation we talked about the least, because we're still sort of figuring out what it was.
But
like midstream,
Giannis,
and Embiid.
We're on the verge of Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid all being out before the conference finals.
But those are our MVPs over the last half decade. That was the generation for the last half decade. They dominated the league as the best 3 players and just sort of, hot potatoed the MVP trophy. But like you already said, Giannis is out. Embiid is out. Jokic is about to be out. We're about to get to a point where the Western Conference Finals is going to be 2 of the 3 guys I just talked about, between Shai, Luka, and Anthony Edwards. And in the Eastern Conference, it's going to be Jalen Brunson or Tyrese Halliburton or Jason Tatum probably, and all those other guys. But it feels like this next generation just busted the door down, and it felt like we still needed more time from the last generation. And I'm not saying that last generation is going away. Like the Bucks, the Nuggets, the Sixers, they'll all be back next year. But I think this this group is coming, man.
Ant being here right now with this team right now, it is a catapult for him. And you could define that a bunch of different ways. I think you're saying if he's at worst like number 3 on that list, that in itself is insane. Mm-hmm. That for where he'll still be young. Like, none of those guys are going to be like old. Wemby, obviously, especially young, but Ant will be 27 in 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obscene. He's going to be in his prime. He's 22. He can make the finals this year, make it before Luka does, have maybe a better chance of title than Devin Booker had a couple years ago. Get there before Donovan Mitchell did, or ever has gotten close. have a chance to win a title before like a lot of his peers, have the same number, have more titles than Embiid if he's able to pull this off, or he'll make the conference finals at this rate before Embiid's even made one.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna have this list of accomplishments at an age that is gonna put him there, and he has a personality. This is like a catapult to some level of superstardom for Ant that I think people that were watching the league a lot knew and like started to break through, and he had some real moments, obviously with the posterized dunks, but the playoff success thing on top of his personality and the competitiveness that he plays with and the edge he plays with, I think that's going to get him there. Particularly if he if they beats Denver, they win this in 6, let's say, right? Like him saying, I just beat the defending champs. I was the best player on the floor in a series with a 3-time MVP. That does so much for him on so many levels.
And this sounds disrespectful. I mean, he's beating these bosses, but he's almost doing it, and it looks like it's on easy mode. You know?
Yeah.
Like, they swept the floor, literally swept Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns. They haven't lost a game or trailed for very much of any minute of this series against the Denver Nuggets. It doesn't look hard for this guy. And that, to me, is the most mind-blowing thing. This reminds me of Dwayne Wade, 2005, 2006. They go ahead, the Heat make that trade for Shaq because they recognize the talent that they have on their hands, however young that player might be, ahead of schedule, but they recognize, the Heat did, hey, we're ready to make a run at this thing. We just need his co-star. The Timberwolves, they make that trade for Rudy Gobert a couple years ago, and everybody's sort of panning it, but maybe they recognize that they had somebody in Anthony Edwards, and it looks like it's paying off right now. And if he goes on and wins, if they make the finals, I don't know. I almost would just like feel myself wanting to pump the brakes on this, you know? But that's what we're talking about here. And we have seen a few guards start having breakouts like this. I think about Donovan Mitchell early on in Utah, and we were like, wow, this is incredible what he's doing. And then Ja Morant with Memphis. This guy could be the face of the league. And then different things happened to those players, and things went sideways and whatever. And I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just prisoner of the moment here, but it doesn't feel like that's in the cards for Anthony Edwards. It just sort of feels like whatever he wants to happen can happen. And this feels more real and more impactful than I think even the Mitchell and Ja Morant stuff did, because I don't think anybody ever expected Memphis to win a championship. Like, nobody ever considered the Grizzlies a real title contender. Nobody really considered the Utah Jazz a title contender. Nobody really got there. I think the way we feel about this Timberwolves team is just completely different in terms of their viability as a finals team, because of also the teams that they've beaten in terms of beating the Phoenix Suns and being up 2-0 on the Denver Nuggets.
Unbelievable. I can't wait to see what that environment's like Minnesota for Game 3, Wes. I mean,
it's a great home court. Great Minneapolis, great basketball town. Very exciting.
Any last thing on this? Any way you see this, just to devil's advocate ourselves, anything you see for the Nuggets as far as them, is there a way back in this series? I think the two things to me would be Jokic looks more settled, and I think it's Murray. I think it really has to be Murray, plays really well. I just can't see them coming back unless Murray gets hot and gets rolling. I just don't think it's possible. I'm skeptical that's happening just based on that calf. Mm-hmm. But I think it's going to start with that partnership of the Jokic-Murray, which has been thrown into the blender and harassed so far in this series.
The first thing is Denver needs to be way better defensively. I know that the Nuggets aren't an awesome defensive team, but they've been better than this. They're lazy on these closeouts. They're not getting up to the level of the screen fast enough. They need to. They're giving Anthony Edwards so many gaps to get through that their defense. They need to close those gaps off better. And it's not going to be always possible. Anthony Edwards is just that overwhelming, but they can do a better job of it and not giving him as much of a runway. So to me, it starts defensively with that team, closing those gaps, being better on closeouts and things like that. I also think they don't really have an answer for Anthony Edwards on defense. Like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, it's not working. The Holiday thing didn't work. Aaron Gordon, they've dabbled in it. He's not fast enough.
They just might. To me, that's the one I would want maybe just try just from like a size standpoint and say, Aaron, we need you to make threes too, but if we're going to pick one, can you just be super physical with Ant and go for like that? Might be the only way. You
might just have to deny him the ball. You might have to just face guard him for 94 feet at this point. And maybe that's what you do with Holiday. It's like, hey man, You're not really a factor on offense anyway. Just chase this guy around and face guard him and deny him the ball. Because once he has the ball, I don't think that Denver has an answer for Anthony Edwards, right? Like you mentioned a couple of plays in that game. I mean, I think about the one where he kneed Contavious Caldwell in the groin. And the thing that doesn't really get talked about in that play is that he went up and met Caldwell Pope in the air and they collided bodies. Caldwell Pope went down like a sack of potatoes, and Anthony Edwards, his body midair didn't move, and he still made the layup. That guy is so strong. His body control is so good. He is so fast. There is not a defender on the Nuggets that can match him, right? Aaron Gordon's too slow. He's strong enough, but he's too slow. Contavious Caldwell Pope might be able to stay up laterally with him, but he's not strong enough. And so, I don't know, maybe you just deny him the ball and then hope that Cat gets goaded into some mistakes. I think that Denver could possibly come back in this series without Jamal Murray, but it would take really big, out of body Michael Porter Jr. greatest performance of his career type of run here,
and maybe like multiple times,
or Aaron Gordon. Yeah, no, it would definitely take multiple times if they're going to win this series for sure. But that would be the only. And then I do expect Jokic to play better. That will be his worst game that he plays this series. I'm pretty confident in that. So
yeah, I also think, Wes, if they come out, this is picking nits a little bit, but if I don't think the complaining helped them in game 2.
It didn't.
I really, I think when your coach, when every one of your players is complaining and yelling at the refs, and like you're not even playing well, and you're like saying it's kind of almost like deflecting. You kind of just got to not do that and just show up and play basketball and not do that. Like that's a very, again, generalist thing to say here, but I kind of think to your point, they take themselves out of their flow, out of their game when they are just bitching that much.
Yep.
And it was bitching.
And Mike Malone is going to say something. It's like, all right, we're not that team enough. Yeah. Get back to business.
Was honestly shocked he didn't get a technical when he like erupted as mad as I've ever seen an NBA coach. Mm-hmm. Can't think of a coach madder than Mike Malone in that moment.
Yeah, I didn't love the officiating on Monday night in general, but more than the officiating, I didn't like how much complaining there was. We get players all the time begging, just let the players play, let the players play, let the players play, and then when the players are allowed to play, all they do is complain about not getting the foul calls. So you don't get to have it both ways. Let us play unless I'm the one that's getting fouled. It doesn't go that way. It doesn't go both ways. So just stop complaining.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Knicks, Indiana, because this was a grind fest, Wes. This was, I think, made a lot of sense for what the series was going to look like. What to you was your big takeaway from Knicks Pacers game 1?
That the game was closer than I think it's going to be for the rest of the series.
Okay.
I think the Knicks are just the better basketball team. Indiana's depth kept them in that game. The Knicks are not a particularly deep team, but they have more depth than that. They also got big performances from Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart, and I just think that as the series goes on, that their starting lineup is just going to overwhelm Indiana's. And Tyrese Halliburton is clearly limited, and this is a tough matchup for the Pacers because you and Brendan talked about this in your preview, but the Knicks have some answers for Pascal Siakam. Siakam was awesome in the first round, but that was because the Bucks had Siakam's an awesome player. I don't mean to take anything away from him, but the Bucks also had no options to guard him. The Knicks do. OG Anunoby is a good option. So where does that leave Tyrese Halliburton? He has to get back to that level where he was the first 2 or 3 months of the season for the Pacers to have a chance in this series. And because of the health, and he was even questionable for game 1, I don't see that being an option for him. I don't see him just miraculously getting healthy and transforming back into that player. And if that doesn't happen, then I think the series is pretty much over.
Yeah, he was very timid. I mean, he took 6 shots and 5 of them were from 3. He took 1 shot inside the arc, didn't take a single free throw. I mean, if you're a lead offensive engine, if you're the thing that makes an offense move, or supposed to be, that can't really happen in the playoff game. The Knicks deserve a ton of credit for how physical they are with him, for having the size to throw at him. I thought DiVincenzo was just awesome in this game.
Mm-hmm.
That
made the
guy's
big
just
3 at the end, and that was one where Tyrese Halliburton was late on the closeout. And people are ragging on Halliburton, but the dude's dealing with a hamstring injury and a back injury that almost sidelined him for that game. You're not closing out your fastest when you're dealing with these injuries. It's been too much. I think it's awesome experience for the Pacers, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just recency bias guy here, but I picked the Knicks going into this series. I felt really good about it. I was surprised by how close that game was at the end there. And the Pacers had a chance there. If they like that Miles Turner moving screen, that was a tough call. That was a tough call to get in that moment. So they had a chance to win that game. But that to me would have been the Pacers going into New York and stealing that game. I don't know that I would have been shook from my stance had that happened. I still would have been really comfortable with my pick of the Knicks winning that series.
Yeah, I still favor the Knicks, to be clear. I'm curious to see their energy level definitely looked a little bit lower in game one.
To start.
Like, just it took them a little bit to get going, which makes sense considering they just played a hellacious series against Philly and all this stuff. They're also not going to have Mitchell Robinson for game two. He's going to be out with injury maintenance. I think this could be more of an Achua series anyway, and maybe this just gets one of their guys some rest. But if they only played... I mean, they functionally played like 7 guys. I'm just going to count Achua as Robinson as one guy because they played a combined 16 minutes off the bench, and McBride was the high bench guy at 11. Like, what is this team's energy going to look like game to game? I do think that makes them susceptible, but it's relying on Tyrese Haliburton to capitalize. It's a hard series for Siakam to do so. I mean, part of the reason, the 2 guys that I think did Indiana a lot of good in this game, Wes, were T.J. McConnell, 9 of 16, 3 assists, 3 steals, did some very T.J. McConnell stuff, and Obi Toppin, who I really, really liked in this game. He had a couple-minute stretch in the second half where he was just killing it on both ends of the floor. He's making threes, he's getting dunks, he's getting rebounds, he's blocking shots. He's playing with a ton of energy. You got, like, maybe if I'm Indiana, where I'd feel negative is you maybe got the best 2 games you're going to get from from those 2 role guys in this whole series, and you didn't win, and it's because your lead horse just maybe doesn't have it right now. And if your lead horse, your lead guy doesn't have it, it's tough, particularly when Jalen Brunson, by comparison, he's probably exhausted. I'm sure his body feels like shit right now, but he just goes and goes and goes. He took 14 free throws and took 26 shots in this game. He had 43 and 6 with 4 turnovers. That guy's a machine. He's not going to be... He's purely relentless, and I don't think Haliburton has that gear right now. It doesn't feel like.
Nope, it's a great point. Pacers fans will probably say, well, if we just get a better game from Siakam and Haliburton, then maybe we win that game. But it doesn't work that way because McConnell, you might not get that game from him. You might not get that Obi Toppin game, to your point. I was thinking halfway through this game, I'm like, should they just start TJ McConnell in this series? He's just been a better player in the playoffs than Tyrese Haliburton. Now, obviously, you can't do that. Haliburton is the face of the franchise. Everything's built around him. But it feels like Haliburton is almost more of a negative out there, given this guy, I don't know that he should be playing. He doesn't look right. He doesn't look the way that Tyrese Haliburton used to look. So there's that. My last point on this series, when do we get to the part where we stop talking about the fact that Josh Hart plays 48 minutes a game?
Never. I mean, I think that's just part of our...
That's just going to be it? Okay.
Yeah, I think Knicks plus the Tibbs kind of aura around, what is his body... I mean, frankly, it's a science experiment, because is his body going to fall apart like Joakim Noah's and the Will Dengs did? I'm just wondering for Josh's sake,
I'm over it. I get it. He's an awesome player. It's really cool that he's playing 48 minutes in a world where players don't really do that anymore. But we have to. It's almost getting to LeBron territory where every time LeBron dunked, Reggie Miller was like, "Oh my God, can you believe this guy's 39?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's not 89. He's 39, and he's been one of the most athletic people in the universe for his entire life. It's not that big of a deal that the guy's still dunking, and it's not every time Josh Hart gets a rebound in the fourth quarter. I don't need to hear, "Oh my God, I can't believe he got an offensive rebound. This guy's been playing so many minutes." The guy's a basketball player. He's in great shape. It's cool. I don't mean to take anything away from him, but let's not act like the guy's curing cancer every time that he gets an offensive rebound. Can we just chill out on it?
Yeah, that's fair. Last thing I'll say is offensive rebounding. Pacers did a good job in game one as well as limiting the Knicks' second chances. Pacers got 7 offensive rebounds. The Knicks only had 8. If that is also that kind of margin the rest of the series, Wes, that's another reason the way the Pacers could keep this close, because the Knicks' offense there's a lot built on them getting offensive rebounds, and if they do a good job rebounding, then hey, maybe there's something there for them. All right, last thing we're going to get to in this first part, Pat Riley. I just got to clear out. I'm going to clear out for you, Wes. Pat Riley, I want to say it this way, and then I'll turn it over to you. Pat Riley, I respect the shit out of, because he's you could call him the last honest NBA front office person when they talk to the media, because he actually said what he was feeling. He called Tyler Hero fragile. He said Jimmy Butler needs to stop taunting, and if you're not playing, then I don't want to hear from you. he just kept it real in a league and in an environment where like executives don't really do that anymore for reasons I fully understand and sympathize with, because you're trying to like maintain relationships. But Pat Riley, due to his probably his age and his who he is and all he's accomplished, does not give a shit. I'm fascinated. Like, I was fascinated by the fact that he just showed up, threw the rings down, and just said, "Jimmy Butler, you've been the best guy on our team for 2 years. I'm gonna hold you. I'm just gonna kind of throw you under the bus here because you kind of deserve it in some ways."
Yeah. So basically, Pat Riley was asked during his annual end of season press conference what he thought about. I thought a softball question.
Okay.
It was a fine question, but it was a softball.
I mean,
it was
when you throw the fat fastball down the middle, it is easier just to like turn your hips and hit a homer. So, you know,
that's true, and boy did he, because he was asked about Jimmy Butler's comments that went viral over the weekend about how, you know, if Jimmy Butler were healthy and in the playoffs, then Boston would be at home, and then the Knicks would be at home. And again, he was asked about that in sort of the context of, do you agree with Jimmy Butler? Like, would that Celtics series been more competitive had you had Jimmy Butler? How close do you think that your two teams really were? And Pat Riley just basically said, well, if you're not out there to play the Celtics, and if you're not out there to play the Knicks, then maybe you should keep your mouth shut. And that quote went viral for obvious reasons, because like you said, Chris, you just don't hear stuff like that from front offices. But 95% of his 45-minute press conference, I was there for it, was Pat Riley taking issue with the fact that his team wasn't available this year. And he wasn't blaming it on fluky injuries, right? He said that they need to figure something out, because it's been a couple of years now where the Heat have been prone to injury and broken down and not really getting a chance to see what they can do, right? And Jimmy Butler does not play a lot of games. And you know, he played 60 games this year. And there's probably 20 games where he was there physically, but not necessarily there in terms of mental engagement. And that puts a lot of pressure on guys like Bam and Tyler Hero to be those number one options until Jimmy Butler decides that he wants to be that number one option. So it hurts the chemistry of the team. It hurts the continuity. And these are all things that Pat Riley realizes. And I do think that with Jimmy Butler's extension coming up, this is going to be the biggest topic of conversation. Is if Jimmy Butler wants that extension, he's going to have to show Pat Riley a commitment to being more available in the regular season, so that they don't have to play in the play-in tournament for what's been now 2 straight years. Next year it would be 3 straight years if they end up doing that again. And by the way, Jimmy Butler got hurt in the play-in tournament. Had you taken care of business in the regular season, Kelly Oubre doesn't ever fall on your knee, right? And you're not playing the Boston Celtics in the first round. Which Eric Spoelstra said that they regretted. They didn't want to play the Celtics in the first round, that they probably needed a round or two to ramp up to the level that the Celtics have been playing at all regular season. So this season did not go as planned, and now Jimmy Butler's going to want an extension. And here's my hot take, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Butler's going to ask for that extension. He's going to ask for the max. He's not going to get it. Pat Riley is going to say, if you want to talk about money, then we need to talk about your availability. Even if Jimmy Butler says, I'll be more available, Pat Riley's not going to believe him, because he said it last year. Jimmy Butler and his agent, Bernie Lee, went into Pat Riley's office last year, and Pat Riley asked them, hey, we don't want to be in the play-in tournament again. The 8th seed to the finals run was really cool, but we don't want to deal with that again. We'd rather be a home court advantage team in the playoffs. Can you be more available for us in the regular season? And Jimmy Butler said yes, and then he didn't do it. He missed the entire preseason, and then he missed the 3rd game of the regular season for rest purposes.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't show up. And I think there's a level of frustration by the Miami Heat. So they're not going to give him the contract extension that he wants. They can't. He's going to be 35 years old next season. There's no way you can do it. Jimmy Butler's best basketball is behind him. The window in Miami is closed. And I think Pat Riley realizes that and sees it coming. And I would be surprised if Jimmy Butler were playing for the Miami Heat next year at this point. I'm having a hard time, in other words, finding a way Jimmy Butler's playing for the Heat next year. I think the Heat would love to just let him play out the current contract, not give him the extension. But I don't think that's going to fly for Jimmy Butler. I think he's going to want the extension. He's not going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's going to be a team out there, the Philadelphia 76ers perhaps, that says,
that's the one.
We'll give it to you.
That's the one. That's the one. I'm all on board on this. I think we're going to get a weird summer in the NBA on a lot of fronts. I think Jimmy Butler maybe being on another team is part of it. I get the part of it that I find really most interesting, Wes, though, is kind of like everything you're saying I think is right. I guess I'm just wondering is what's going on with Jimmy right now? Is it only an issue now because the contract stuff? I think that's like the thing.
It is.
Because this is who he's been for a couple of years. We know Jimmy doesn't play a ton of regular season games. It's just kind of what he does. Made you the finals last year, though, but because you were in the play-in this year and you got bounced and Jimmy wasn't around and did a very Jimmy social media post, that seems to just like ruffle some feathers, which I do understand.
They're sick of it. They are. They're sick of it. Just telling you.
Jimmy might be, I want to say this kindly, because I adore Jimmy Butler in a lot of ways. At least fairly, maybe if not kindly. Is Jimmy Butler just like a really great mercenary to have for teams that like want to win right now?
I think right now he is. He can't be your number one option. It's not in the regular season. Jimmy Butler is not a regular season superstar. He's a postseason superstar until he's not. And that's the problem with Jimmy Butler. Is the Miami Heat have had these golden handcuffs around them, basically saying, "Hey, we just got to get through this regular season and make the playoffs by the skin of our teeth because playoff Jimmy is going to show up and save us and lift us through the playoffs and get us to the finals." And that's been true for almost two seasons, almost 3 seasons. But there's going to become a point where Jimmy Butler is going to be too old to summon playoff Jimmy. And he's going to knock on that door and nobody's going to answer. You know? And I think we probably were already at that point because we saw signs of aging this year. Like you mentioned Jimmy Butler missing regular season games. That's always happened. But the games that he played, he was always way more impactful. And Jimmy Butler's impact goes beyond a box score. But I watched every single Heat game this year, and he was not as impactful as he had been in years previous. And Bernie Lee came out and told the Sun Sentinel, hey, like this narrative that Jimmy Butler missed a bunch of games and isn't available is totally overblown. He played the most minutes per game ever than he ever has in Miami. So things that are true. But I watched those games, man, and Jimmy Butler was not mentally available, not physically available in the way that he had been in years past. His finishing numbers have declined at the rim. Like all his free throw numbers are down. All of these are strong indicators of a player in decline. By the way, he's going to be 35 years old. This isn't shocking. Like, not everybody is going to be LeBron doing this at 40 years old. The fact that he's 35 years old and declining makes sense. It would be weird if it wasn't happening, right? Especially with the wear and tear on this guy's body. So
let me ask you this last thing then.
Yeah.
If, let's say, Jimmy goes, obviously a lot of time between now and the draft and free agency for us to like learn more and see what happens. But if you had to guess right now, if they would go in a direction of we're going to try to replace Jimmy right now and be aggressive, or do they kind of turn to Heat culture and say we're going to take a step and give our chances a second to breathe and develop internally and go that route? If they're going to lean one way or the other, which way do you think they would go?
They're not taking that step back. They don't do that. First of all, they have certain picks out to OKC and stuff where the protections they don't want to risk being at a lottery or tanking. They would, because then they would lose their draft picks. So that's not going to happen. No, you trade Jimmy Butler in a calculated move because the Heat, as we know, have been trying to trade for a superstar for the last 3 years. Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard. They couldn't get it done, in part because they don't have the assets. Well, if you trade Jimmy Butler for more assets that help you get that deal done, then that's how you do that. Players around the league respect Jimmy Butler, but they want to play with Bam Adebayo. Bam's the cornerstone. When you start talking about a superstar, and the conversation for years in Miami is what superstar fits best with Jimmy Butler, that's not the conversation anymore. Not with Jimmy going into his age 35 season and Bam being in his prime. The conversation now has to shift to what superstar pairs well with Bam Adebayo, and what two-man game can we basically build our entire team around. And if I'm the Heat and I'm the front office, I'm not trying to trade Jimmy Butler. That's not my point here. I don't want to see Jimmy Butler go. He's one of the great players in Miami Heat history, and these times have been wild and fun, and it's been the second most successful era in Miami Heat history, right behind the Big Three. But we're getting to the point now where Jimmy Butler might say, if you don't pay me, then what are we going to do? And the Heat are not going to be in a position to pay him or give him the contract extension. And then, Chris, they're basically in the same point, the same place that they are with Donovan Mitchell. that the Cavs are with Donovan Mitchell. It's like, well, if this guy's not going to, if we're not going to extend this guy, if this guy's not, well, then what are we going to do with him? So I don't know. I think that where this ends up, and it does pain me to say this, but I think where we end up is Jimmy Butler playing for a different team and the Heat using whatever assets they get in a trade for Jimmy Butler to put towards another star that's going to be on the move this summer who fits Bam Adebayo's championship window a little bit more. That's the thing. That's just sort of how I see this playing out, and I'm having a hard time finding a route where Jimmy Butler is playing for the Heat next year, which sounds crazy because it just seems easier to maintain the status quo. But I find it really hard to conceive of a way where that happens without the Heat giving him the max contract extension that he's going to want.
Wes, let's move to Cavs Celtics now, where Boston cruised. And I would say this. I think this is what this whole series is going to look like. I think Boston, whether it's a game where Jason Tatum's off and Jaylen Brown is good and Derek White's hot, whether Tatum's on, whether Kristaps Porzingis plays in this series or not, I think the way this game was played tempo-wise, structure-wise, every aspect of this game was on Boston's terms. Cleveland doesn't have a shot if the series looks like this the rest of the way, and I don't really think they have it in them, whether Jared Allen plays or not, to dictate the terms of the series going in a different direction.
It would seem like that, given that the Celtics won by 25 points, their fifth double-digit win of the postseason. The only time that they didn't basically dominate the game was Game 2 against the Heat, when the Heat shot 53%. In 6 games.
Five,
right?
Yeah, that's nuts.
It was just another clinic performance by Boston. Another unbelievable game by Derek White, who is the breakout star of these playoffs that nobody is talking about. Or I guess if you're not talking about Anthony Edwards, I don't know. But he's going to get a lot more attention, too, as this thing goes on. There were some interesting X's and O's things in this game, like the Cavs deciding to use Max Strus on Jason Tatum, put Isaac Okoro on Jaylen Brown. Not sure I love that decision, but that's what they went ahead to do. The Celtics on their end, they put Jason Tatum on Evan Mobley, which I thought was a really smart move by Joe Mazzulla, because Tatum is their best switch defender. And when you have Mobley involved in the actions, especially with Jared Allen out, and Mobley's basically involved in every pick and roll, then that allows Tatum to switch onto all those pick and rolls. So, like the X's and O's stuff, there was some interesting little tidbits here, but at the end of the day, I don't think that any of it mattered, because the Celtics are just such a better team than the Cavaliers at this point, which is a little sad on the Cavs side, given the level of talent that they have. But
sure,
if Donovan Mitchell isn't going to get that level of help that he needs, then I just don't see a way where they can win this series. I don't really see a way where this goes further than 5 games, and this might end up just playing out very similar to the first round when Boston beat Miami.
That's where I think it's headed. That's what I thought coming in, and this did nothing to check my priors on this. We saw this in round 1 already, Wes. If Donovan Mitchell doesn't get help, it doesn't matter how many points he scores. He had 33 in this game, and it just didn't matter. He had a pretty good game, and it did not matter. And look, the Cavs got a good game from Okoro. I thought Evan Mobley in the second half, if there's anything encouraging for Cleveland, him attacking smaller guys and getting to the rim was a good sign. But it's weird that he hasn't taken a 3 since Game 3 of the Magic series, after he kind of has dabbled in threes here and there, and he took them aggressively to start that series. I understand he's operating more in the paint now, but fives on other teams that don't have other bigs on the floor stretch out to the perimeter. That's weird that he just doesn't do that now. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a weird tactical choice on Cleveland's part as well. I did also like that they played Sam Merrill, and Sam Merrill got up 5 shots, and it's like, I think they understand kind of what they need to do. It just doesn't feel like they have the horses to do it, particularly like if Darius Garland doesn't play well, and he was kind of back to kind of mid Darius Garland in this game.
Again, same thing with the Heat in the first round, right? They went out in Game 2 and did what they had to do, which is, if you're going to beat the Celtics, you almost have to beat them at their own game, where you go out and shoot and make more three-pointers than they shoot and make. But the problem is, when your muscle memory as a team, when your habits as a team aren't to take those open threes, aren't to take the contested ones, right? When you're a team like Cleveland or Miami that wants to try to get into the paint a little bit more and make it a little bit more of a physical game, that's not your natural inclination just to sort of get it up. Where with the Celtics, they're like, all right, we're going to get up shots in the first 7 or 8 seconds of the shot clock. We don't care if they're semi-contested. We want to win the three-point battle. Their entire ethos as a team is built around winning that three-point battle. And maybe you can cobble it together for one game like the Heat did in Game 2, and then you get the proof of concept. But then once you kind of hit a little bit of adversity in the next game, you retreat back to your comfort zone. And so I just, it's cool that Sam Merrill got up 5 shots. It's cool that he's willing to take those shots, but I don't know that Sam Merrill is going to be the reason why, it's Sam Merrill at the end of the day, man. Like, he's not beating the Boston Celtics. So it's like,
exactly.
I just don't really know where we're going. So I almost want to, I think, well, I do know where we're going. We're going to the Boston making the Eastern Conference Finals again. My question to you is, I look at Cleveland's starting 5.
Mm-hmm.
And on paper, it is the most talented starting 5 outside of Boston in the Eastern Conference. There is not a team in the East, and arguably the league, that can compare their starting 5's all-star bona fides, resumes, and just sheer talent level.
This is when Allen is healthy. He's obviously out right now with the
right.
thing.
You're
saying Allen not starting 5. Yeah.
But even without Jared Allen, there's no Kristaps Porzingis for the Celtics. You've got Evan Mobley, right? He's a rising young star. You've got Donovan Mitchell. You've got Darius Garland, who's made an all-star game. You've got Max Strus, who's started in NBA Finals games, right? You've got talented first-round picks and things like that coming off the bench. Why isn't this team better?
I have 2 big reasons for you. Number one, I don't think this team ever built habits this year. I believe the regular season matters for 99.9% of teams. The 0.1% of teams it doesn't matter for are teams with LeBron James, like 8 years ago. Not even now. Like, It's 8 years ago, prime LeBron. That guy could whip stuff into shape for the playoffs. It doesn't exist anymore. The Cavs had like 3 regular seasons in one. They had the beginning part of the year where they were kind of mid. They have the run in January where they surged up to the 2 seed and looked like they were probably going to get the 2 seed and were awesome. But Mobley and Garland are out. And then they have the end of the regular season where everyone's healthy and nothing felt disjointed. So I don't think they ever had, and Mitchell had injuries as well. I think they had no rhythm throughout the year. Secondly, I just don't think JB Bickerstaff is a good enough coach.
Maybe that's it makes sense. No, I mean, look, you've got all the talent in the world. It makes sense that you would point to the coach then.
I think he is a very solid locker room guy who was needed to take over this franchise after they made the dumb decision of hiring John Beilein, and John Beilein got fired because for a variety of reasons, but he claimed he used the word slugs when he might have said another word that is pretty offensive. JB Bickerstaff got outcoached by Tibbs last year. I don't think he's a particularly modern offensive coach. I also don't think the Cavs have done like a great job at bringing in the assistants you might need for this. Like Luke Walton is like one of their main assistants. What has Luke Walton done other than like ride the coattails of being on Steve Kerr's staff during those Warriors years? He was bad with the Lakers. He was bad with the Kings. They don't have like a Phil Handy. They don't have like a Jordy Fernandez. And I don't think there's enough imagination in that offense. I don't think there's enough creativity there. I think they've been kind of stuck in the mud. I think some of it is talent and personnel hasn't added up to where it could be, but I think it's a combination of the habits this year not being built, no sustainability, and I don't think the coaching job has been good enough. Like I think, Wes, if Mike Budenholzer is coaching this team, I'm not saying they're beating Boston, but I think they're a more functional team right now and would have been more functional throughout the whole year.
That's fair.
Which is like weird to say because Bud's not like the greatest coach in the world, but he's like a good coach.
No, but the thing is, and this is very different than the next team we're going to talk about here, is the thing with Budenholzer is Budenholzer has an identity. He can establish an identity on a team relatively quickly, and the Cavs seem like they're missing that. And I think that's very apparent this season and in this series, and that's why the Cavs season is going to end where it ends.
It wouldn't surprise me if new coach, and I mean it was telling. Mark Stein in his newsletter had a Ty Lue thing in one of his last newsletters on Substack, and he had a point that was like he had a note in there that was the Cavs would be interested in reunion with Ty Lue if, as many people predict, they move on from JB Bickerstaff. That's telling me that they're already thinking about moving on from JB Bickerstaff. Is what
Ty Lue would be crazy to do that, but if Ty Lue's really that sick of the Clippers situation, who knows?
Ty Lue left when he got sick of the Cavs the first time, and I think as much as they've had some success since then, I don't think the organization in its culture and the way it works is that different from when he left, which is troubling.
Well, any new coach that they get is going to want to know what's up with Donovan Mitchell and his future. But that's a whole other podcast and a whole other topic.
Yeah, we are going to do a Cavs GM thing, I think, in the summer. They're one of the teams that I think there's a lot there's a lot of different ways you could sell me on what they should do this summer, and we should get into it. But other game tonight, the Oklahoma City Thunder have made a absolute statement, I think, in Game 1, Wes. Came out winning by double digits, creating garbage time in this game, and we're going to do 5 things that decided this game to dive in here. Number 1 for me, and this is a great shout out to you, so I want to turn it to you. Oklahoma City knows themselves, and they know exactly what they want to do. No matter the stage, no matter the moment, no matter the pressure, they understand what they are and how they want to play basketball.
And they're the youngest 1 seed in a million years, right?
With a dumb young head coach who's never been head coach before.
For such a young team, the Thunder might be the most self-assured team in the NBA. They know exactly what they want to do, what their weaknesses are, and how to compensate for them. They're not a team that tells you that they have no weaknesses. They acknowledge that they're a little bit thin, that they don't have as much size as some of these other teams, but they have practiced in how to compensate for that. Dallas threw some interesting defensive wrinkles at them in this game. They adjusted, Oklahoma City did, immediately. And when I say immediately, I mean immediately. So the big question going into this series was, how are the Mavericks going to defend or not defend Josh Giddey? And throughout the regular season, they put Gafford on Giddey quite a bit, or whoever their starting center was at the time on Giddey, and just had him hang back into the paint and guard against the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams drives. But they started this game instead by having Luka guard Giddey and have Luka sort of be the rover and then keep Gafford on Chet Holmgren. And as soon as they realized this on the first possession, and on the second possession of the game, they had Giddey initiate the offense, engage Luka high up on the floor, take the rover out of the paint, and they got Luka then switched onto Shai, and then Shai was able to drive right by Luka for a layup. That is immediate recognition, immediate adjustment, and immediate execution. And it's why this team is so good. It's why Mark Daigneault is the coach of the year, because he has this team prepared in that way. And it's why this team is so dangerous. And then in the second half, when Dallas moved Gafford back to Giddey, they pushed the Holmgren button, who was not as much of a factor in the first half, and then took over in the second half. And it felt like basically the entire game, Chris, that the Mavericks were scrambling to plug holes all game while the Thunder just paddled in unison like a great rowing team until garbage time with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. OKC didn't overthink things on their own defense. They put their best defenders on Dallas's best players. You know, they had Dort guard Luka. They had Jalen Williams guard Kyrie Irving. They didn't overthink it. Then they had Shai and Jalen Williams take over down the stretch. And that was the game plan. And they do this every game, no matter who they play. They know exactly what they do, and they just do it. And it's remarkable, again, for such a young team to have this level of self-awareness and be able to execute it on a game-to-game basis.
I'll add to that by saying that it's amazing to me that Chet already looks comfortable in this environment. He doesn't look phased. He doesn't look like out physicaled or bothered by what's going on out there. He's hitting one leg fadeaway pull-up middies. He's getting to the rim. He's screaming. Chet is here and ready and doesn't look like he has any qualms about it, like being himself in this environment. For him, who is skinny, who is the center on a team that intentionally doesn't really rebound very well and doesn't really prioritize rebounding, for him to just be comfortable with that and do his thing and have a 19-7 game against Dallas is like that's unbelievable. Like, the only way that happens is if he is empowered to be that. That's the beauty of the Thunder team.
With 3 blocks and then impacted a number of other shots at the basket too. That kind of leads me to one of my takeaways from this game was Dallas really misses Maxi Kleber.
Yeah.
They didn't really have that guy to pull Chet away from the rim, right? And Chet was able to just drop back, hang back, did not care about Daniel Gafford out on the perimeter. They were playing drop on nearly every pick and roll there was. And it really hurt Luka, and it really hurt Kyrie Irving. There was a play in the third or fourth quarter where Kyrie tried to do the Kyrie thing where he slithers and uses that crazy handle to get to the basket, and Chet just stood him up. Chet just put both hands up in the air. Kyrie had to force a shot at the end of the clock, and that was it. Kyrie missed the contested look, and it's pretty remarkable just seeing Chet hang back there and corral these guys who are trying to slither their way into him. Having Kleber there in the first round series against the Clippers kind of changed that series, and now that he's out, they don't really have that lever to pull, and it'll be interesting to see how they adjust, because it does feel like they're going to have to find a way to get Chet out of the paint, and how do they do it? Do we see a little bit more small ball stuff going forward? Neither team did anything crazy adjustment wise in this first game.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if Jason Kidd, newly extended, congrats to Kidd.
Good job on using the Lakers as a stalking horse. Just good job by his agent.
Hey, it's the playbook, man.
Yeah,
every coach has it.
That's right.
Do you go PJ Washington at the 5? Like, I do. I just wonder. And even if you do, does Chet say that's cool? I don't really care if PJ Washington is like, we're not worried about, like, he can hit threes, but we're not worried about him beating us from 3-point range. That's, to me, the thing that's keeping me up at night if I'm Jason Kidd is how do I get Chet away from the basket?
Yeah, I don't think they're panicking with him. I think if it's PJ at the 5, I don't think there's super panic. It was notable to me that Tim Hardaway Jr. kind of makes a return in this game, plays 17 minutes. He didn't play, if I'm not mistaken, the last 4 games of the Clippers series. He played, I think, a total of like 21, 22 minutes in the first round. And I think to your point about spacing and just needing another shooter on the floor, they said, okay, we got to go back to Tim. He played 17 minutes. He took 4 threes. Didn't really have an impact. And I think we saw, Wes, that's not going to, there's not as much as another shooter could help, Kleber was giving them a very specific thing. He was getting a very specific button to pull,
right?
Run pick and roll, run pick and pop, have him stand in the corner, pull the big out. They don't have another option for that on this roster right now, unless PJ Washington at the 5 is really the only thing they could do. And even then, who's the 5th guy in that lineup to really maximize it? Is it a Hardaway? Is it Josh Green? Is it Dante Exum, who isn't really a shooter and Oklahoma City will ignore? There's not a great answer for Dallas to without Kleber. There's not a good way for them to replace Kleber on their roster right now.
There's not. I at the end of the day, I'm not freaking out though if I'm the Mavericks. It's really easy to kind of see game 1 and do exactly what we did with Celtics Cavs and be like, well, this is over.
Yeah, it's not.
Because in that sense, it is over. In this, it is not even close to over. Congrats to the Thunder. Big time win. Super impressive. But I look at the box score just even, and this was not a great Luka Doncic game. 6 for 19 overall shooting. 1 for 8 from 3-point range. Kyrie Irving, 7 of 14 overall. But wasn't very impactful. A lot of those shots coming late. Wasn't really making much of an impact through the first 3 quarters before this game kind of got away from Dallas. And then you look at overall the shots that both teams were getting. Oklahoma City did a good job getting to the rim. So did Dallas. I mean, it's not as if Dallas was not getting those shots at the rim. A lot of those shots were coming without Chet in the game, but Dallas got 23 shots at the rim. OKC got 27. Their mid-range shots, both teams, and I got the snapshot from cleaning the glass before garbage time, so this is not counting garbage time. Dallas and Oklahoma City both took 24 mid-range shots in this game. Dallas took 31 three-pointers. Oklahoma City took 33 three-pointers. The Thunder just made a bunch of shots at home, and the Mavericks missed a bunch of shots, and I hate to bring the analysis down to that level, but the Mavericks are going to make more shots. Luka specifically is going to make more shots in this series. There's going to be a game that Luka just wins by himself because he's capable of doing that. We didn't see Luka and Kyrie, that 2-man game, at full throttle in this game, and the Thunder definitely deserve a lot of credit for that. Lou Dort, Jalen Williams guarding those guys. The Thunder's decision to put size on Dallas's main scorers definitely threw them for a loop a little bit. It's definitely a hurdle, but these guys are so talented that we know they're going to get over that hurdle, right? They're going to figure that part of it out. And once they do, this series is going to get really interesting, and that can happen as soon as
I would expect it to happen in the next game. I would expect Luka, the question about, the broadcast talked a lot about his knee. We don't know. right? We don't know. I think certainly maybe Dallas comes in a little more worn than OKC after OKC had a very easy first round. Maybe that matters in a game one more than any other game in the rest of the series. If Luka is feeling a little better game two, that makes a world of difference. He was 6 of 19 in this game, didn't really have a lot of lift on his threes, was 1 of 8. Still had 19 and 6. If he just makes some more twos and makes a couple more threes on top of that and gets the free throw line or makes his free throws, like, you kind of solve your problem right there. And this was a close because Dallas did, to their credit, come back in spurts. And guess who was at the driver of that? Luka Doncic. Like, Luka drove that. So if Luka's right, which would be, I think, our next thing, Dallas is fine. And I would expect a big Kyrie game in this series. Even if OKC did a really good job on him and is going to throw bigger wings in him, he is at some point just going to slither free and figure some stuff out. Particularly if Luka gets going, I think the door opens for Kyrie to then be another thing for OKC to kind of have to freak out about.
Yeah, that's sort of the underrated part of the Kyrie Irving experience is now that he's sort of settled into not being the number one option, right? He tried to be that number one in Boston, finally sort of settled into being the number 2 in Brooklyn next to Kevin Durant, and then has really kind of found that role the best he's ever had it and the best he's ever performed this role at since leaving LeBron in Cleveland, right? And Luka in so many ways embodies a lot of what LeBron does is hand him the keys. He's going to create the good looks. As talented and as incredible as Kyrie Irving is, he doesn't create amazing looks on a possession-to-possession basis the way that Luka and LeBron do, right? And so when he's sort of the one that's being fed as opposed to doing the feeding, he becomes this maybe the greatest second-side attacker the league has ever seen. But you do need Luka to start that engine, right? You do need him to start that engine to the offense in order for Kyrie to get going a little bit. It's going to happen. Now, you mentioned, is he right? The broadcaster, right? Like, they kept talking about his knee. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for the record, and every Thunder fan will probably say this, like, okay, like, Luka's knee, what about Shai's leg? Like, he's also dealing with some stuff, and that's fair. But, if Luka's not right, if Luka's injury is this bad, it's not going to matter whether they're playing the Oklahoma City Thunder or the Houston Rockets in the playoffs. They're going to lose. Everything begins and ends with Luka for the Mavericks. So, we'll see what happens.
Throwing rocket shade out. Wow. Just post baby Jalen Green. Just throwing shade, Wes? What are we doing here?
I could have picked another team. I was trying to stick to the region.
Could have picked Spurs? I don't know. It's women in the playoffs would be fun. All right. Last thing I want to say about the Thunder. And this brings us full circle with point one. I'm going to give you some names that are not the sexiest names in the world, but they're names that I think really matter to this team and how we understand this team, at least how I do. Kason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, and Isaiah Joe. Combined in this game to be 7 of 11 from 3, played 23, 23, and 15 minutes. All played really aggressive defense. All know their role, all shoot it. Those are guys that they found from various past first-round pick. Isaiah Joe's off the scrap heap. Like, Wiggins is a find him out of nowhere kind of guy. All guys that they have brought along with them as they've got to this point. Other teams would have just pushed these guys out and got a veteran in there and someone, like, they would have made like the version of like a Pat Bev trade, right? And brought that guy in and put that kind of guy in the rotation. They, in fact, traded for Gordon Hayward at the trade deadline. Gordon Hayward played 7 minutes in this playoff game. Gordon Hayward does not really matter to this team. He's just kind of there. What does matter is the guys that they brought along and guys that they, I think, targeted specifically, Wes, to play within their style, want to empower, and are fitting in exactly what they need to do in the moment you need those exact guys to be around to do that exact thing. Their identity obviously starts with Shai. It goes to J-Dub. It goes to Chet. It goes to what Dagnall's doing. It goes to Dort in the torture chamber. But it also is about them getting these role guys that know exactly what they're supposed to do and are brought in to do pretty specific things. And it works and accentuates everything the Thunder do. It's an advantage they are going to have, frankly, over like a lot of teams are going to play. I mean, it's an advantage I think they have over most of the teams. And to your point at the beginning of the show, this segment, about, okay, they know what they are more than anyone else maybe in the league. I think that's why. It's because they get role guys who fit exactly what they are.
Yep, Isaiah Joe, 3-point specialist. Kason Wallace, little mini Lou Dort, right? You go out there, do a lot of those things. Aaron Wiggins, just be the hustle guy, deflect loose balls. I mean, he had a deflection on I can't remember who passed it, but maybe it might have been Luka on a pick and roll going to Gafford. Gafford kind of having open, and Wiggins just took his right hand and just swatted it out of the way, and then just kept it moving. This team also doesn't celebrate a whole lot.
Then they bark,
over.
And then they go, then they bark, and it's awesome.
Right, they save it all. But they don't do any of this stuff in the middle of the game, man. It's so cool to watch. There's not a lot of complaining to the refs. You see Luka talking to the ref every possession up and down, and sometimes I'm wondering that's got to take away from some. It's taking 2 seconds away where you should be getting into your offense. Like a beat behind the play when you're supposed to be getting back on defense. And the Thunder don't do any of that. They don't complain to the refs. They don't celebrate themselves. They do maybe a little bit you see Shea. He'll just give you a little either 2 or a 3 on his fingers just to let you know which one it is that he scored. And then he just keeps it moving. And that's about it.
He puts more effort into the pregame fits that are pretty audacious than he does on-court emoting.
Yeah, we had a brown.
I don't
know.
Look, there's a lot of things
tonight.
NBA players wear that I just have no business wearing or think. But that one just Luka, just give me the suit. Luka and Jokic have the suit thing down where I'm just let's just do that. LeBron when he wears a nice suit, I'm just in on the suits. I'm not in on the weird leather stuff.
Yeah, it's cool that Shea wears it. Congrats. I have zero envy about that at all. This is not a thing where I'm you know what? I wish I was
an NBA player wearing
a
vintage Carhartt jacket and some workwear pants, and we can talk,
Right, exactly. You're where'd you get that? Look, it's a great point, and they're worthy names to bring up, and it just helps when those guys aren't being relied on to be everything, right? Without looking at the box score, who do you think played more minutes tonight, Josh Green or Isaiah Joe? Just based on the impact that they made.
I know the answer. I already looked at this, so Isaiah Joe did more in his minutes than Josh Green, and he played 2 fewer minutes than Josh Green, if I'm not mistaken. Okay,
played 10 fewer minutes than Josh Green.
Even that tells you I did.
Still
apparently I also can't read. Apparently,
yeah,
that's cool. That's great for me.
You've been outed. So you're like Gronk, but it's remarkable how much Dallas has to rely on, and I don't mean this as shade to Josh Green. He's a good player, Dante Exum, Tim Hardaway, they're fine players, but they kind of need those guys. Where Oklahoma City thought they don't really need Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins. It's cool to have them; it helps, but it's not a requirement for them to win even playoff games. And so this team is really deep. They've done an awesome job constructing this roster, but it starts at the top and everything trickles down to the bottom, and they know exactly what they want to accomplish on every single possession, and it is the thing that impresses me and terrifies me about this team.
Last thing I'll say is if you want one place where this game could just math its way into more evenness, three-point shooting in this game. Pretty even volume for these teams. Dallas 34%, so below average. Oklahoma City, I think, buoyed by being at home and the energy they really clearly fed off of 47.1%, including 50% on non-corner threes. If that gap just shrinks a little bit and Luka's a little better, you have yourself a game. It's not hard to see this still being super competitive, and Dallas winning game 2, to be quite honest.
And the other thing, if you're Dallas, that you're going to want to fix right away, you can't foul Shea and Jalen Williams every single possession in the first half. And some of it was a little ticky-tack, I'll admit, but they weren't really doing themselves any favors either. Got to keep the hands out of the cookie jar. 4 fouls for P.J. Washington, 3 for Daniel Gafford, 3 for Derek Lively. And those are just the big men. Derek Jones Jr. had 4. Josh Green had 3. Shea and Jay Will did a great job kind of baiting them into those fouls. They're going to have to clean that up.
We're going to end there. This has been the Just Basketball Show for Wednesday, May 8th. I'm Chris Manning. That is Wes Goldberg. Wes and Brendan will have you on Friday covering more NBA playoff stuff, anything else going on in between now and then. Maybe we'll get some – we're due for more off-season slop, just as how this league works. So maybe that's coming Friday, but much more basketball to come. Subscribe on YouTube. Please review on your podcast platform of choice. If you've not already, find us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all those great places. Until next time, enjoy the hoops. Have a great rest of your day.